Hello and welcome to the Recursion Cafe, where we play games from the discard pile. In today's game of Star Wars Destiny, we have Dan on the left playing against Paul on the right. Dan is playing Jabba the Hutt, Great and Mighty, who is able to reroll any yellow dice on the field when he activates, alongside his mercenary Jango Fett, who is able to activate in response to another character activating. So a lot of activating yellow villain shenanigans on the left side. Paul is playing Director Krennic, who is able to bring in his Death Trooper if he controls the battlefield, so he will want to go fast, presumably, alongside FN-2199, single die, I believe, who is able to roll in and resolve weapon dice when they are equipped to him, along with the plot Taking Ground, which gives him an advantage in the battlefield roll-off. So it looks like Paul will win the roll-off, so he will choose his Moisture Farm. They both brought the same battlefield, which might seem an odd choice, but Paul wants control of the battlefield in order to get that Death Trooper value. And I think a lot of his cards play off having the battlefield, so I think that makes sense. Dan shields his characters 1-on-1, which is pretty reasonable. Jango's a little bit more fragile, but Jabba, I think, is more key to his game plan. Paul will start off with a quick draw holster on FN-2199, kind of declaring his intentions to arm him with a lot of upgrades. Dan will respond with an outmaneuver, which is not a card I've seen before, but it's pretty cool how he plays with it. And it also signals that Dan wants to take the battlefield off as well, so both will be really vying for battlefield control. Director Krennic will roll in with his Death Trooper support, roll 2 blanks and a single focus. Jango will respond with his ability and roll in. He's kind of like a quick draw character. Dan will put down My Kind of Scum, which, when he resolves a disrupt, he will gain resources equal to the number of resources that the opponent lost. So it makes disrupt just even more powerful and kind of incentivizes Paul to spend his money. Speaking of, he will play Superior Position, play only if you control the battlefield, remove a die. So it's unconditional in the sense of you can remove any die, but conditional in the sense that you have to have the battlefield, which is what his deck wants to do. And there goes the 1 damage from Jango. Jabba will roll in and gets to re-roll a yellow die, which will be his own, rolling a blank into a resource. He's showing a 2 discard, which is very disruptive. And Paul either doesn't want to deal with it or decides that it's alright and rolls in FN for a 1 gun. So a fair amount of blank showing. Jabba will take the resource, probably for some mitigation or just to have some options. Here is a suppression, a 0 cost. Kind of he doesn't like you, which is removing one of your own dice, showing a ranged dice to remove an opponent's die. 0 cost mitigation, always nice. And there goes the 2 discard. So Paul did have an option. In response, Dan plays the original He Doesn't Like You, removing any one of his dice to remove an opponent's die. So a lot of mitigation this turn. I don't think any damage has been done so far. Here we have a 2 disrupt and a +2 on the Death Trooper. So not lighting the one on fire so far. And Krennic only has 1 base ranged side. So, oh, here's an unpredictable. It's an ambush, reroll any die on the field. So here comes the 2 disrupts. Dan might do it for him. He doesn't. He gets the 2 discard instead. What will Dan do? There's not a lot to resolve on that side, so Dan will instead claim the battlefield and get 2 resources for his trouble. Paul will reroll into a focus and a disrupt, which is a shame because the Death Trooper has like 3 base damage sides and 4 damage sides overall. Didn't hit a single one, but Krennic will focus the Death Trooper, who will shoot Jabba for 2 damage through the 1 shield. So Dan starts the next round with 5 resources and Paul with 3. I mean, you expect yellow villains to be able to make a decent amount of money. And first action drops the Crime Lord, which is a very unique upgrade. It doesn't have a blank and has 2 special sides. The special sides say spend 5 resources to choose a character. The character is defeated after this round ends. It puts a death mark on a character and uses Jabba's underworld contact to kind of make them go away by the end of the round. Paul comes in with a hidden blaster. So 2 things happen. FN is able to roll that in and resolve it for free if he's able to, and also there is ambush on the card, so Paul will get another action. So Paul plays it. I think he triggers the ability to roll. Unfortunately, he doesn't get the reroll with quick draw holster because he's not activating the character, but still good value. Unfortunately, he rolls the +2, is not able to resolve it. Technically speaking, he would leave that in the pool, and if he's able to resolve it, he can put it back on FN and roll in again. Here he chooses to use the ambush action to roll in FN, leaving that +2 in the pool correctly, and rolls in the 1. So gets the base damage side, but isn't able to capitalize on FN's ability. Jango rolls in response and is showing 2 guns, so it's kind of like a Mexican standoff sort of situation. But notably, Dan hasn't done any damage just yet, so this might be the start of that downward trend. Dan considering his options. He has 1 resource, so mitigation is open, and if he can control that base side, then the threat on the other side of the board isn't quite as high. He will unpredictable to reroll that base side. Rerolls it into another base side, but crucially it's melee, so it won't trigger the hidden blaster. And then with the ambush action, we'll roll in Jabba, who also can reroll a yellow die on activation. So there's a lot going on Dan's side of the board in one round, or one turn. Rerolls the blank into another blank. So showing 2 shields from the Crime Lord, a focus, a blank, and 2 guns. Notably, the Crime Lord ability costs 5 resources, so even though Jabba has a focus, Dan does not have the resources to kind of upkeep that. Paul plays Imperial Discipline on Director Krennic, which is a good utility card for 1 resource and enables a focus by removing itself from the field. Paul rolls in, rolls a 2 Disrupt, a 1 Shield, and a 1 Focus. The 2 Disrupt, not greatly impactful now, but if Paul has gotten on to Dan's game plan of Crime Lord, then the 2 Disrupt is still pretty valuable. Unfortunately, he has to let it sit there. Looks like Dan has taken the 2 shields from the Crime Lord, not going to be doing the Death Mark this turn. But that makes sense, he's only got 1 resource and there is Disrupt showing. So here comes the Focus into a 2 discard. So Jabba just trying to be maximally disruptive to Paul's side of the board. You could focus one of Jango's die to the 2 gun, but it's not that impactful in that sense. Being a focus, Krennic focuses himself into a 2 gun and will be able to trigger off of the Hidden Blaster as well. There's 2 discard, discarding 2 upgrades, a Comlink and a Z6 Riot Control Baton. That Riot Control Baton is excellent with FN, so that's a bit of a shame, but such is life. There is the modified 4 damage into Jabba, so it's 2 on the shields and 2 under for 3 damage that sticks onto him. And there is the response from Jango to shoot Krennic. So Paul has options. He can maximize the value of his dice, taking shield and the 1 damage, or claim the battlefield. He lets Dan claim the battlefield, netting him 2 resources, opting to get value out of his dice. Unfortunately, he may not have calculated the fact that Dan now has 5 resources, and is now upgrading Jabba with fast hands, which thematically is maybe a bit wonky, but in this matchup is very powerful. Which means Jabba can roll in, re-roll a die, and then resolve. Paul responds with a backup specialist, which is a card from Legacies. It's a support that lets you re-roll dice without discarding cards from hand. So maybe if Paul has very important cards in hand, he can kind of hold on to them when he needs them. In comes Jabba. He rolls the Crime Lord special natively and rolls 2 single focus from Jabba's die. He's able to re-roll if he wishes. But Fast Hands is able to fire off straight away and activate that Crime Lord. There's the 2 Disrupt. And before Paul is able to control Crime Lord, Dan pays the 5 resources and marks Director Krennic for death. So at the end of this round, Director Krennic will go away. So that's exceptionally powerful. It takes a lot of resources and is, a single die that can be controlled. But with that particular combination, that was pretty brilliant, to be honest. Jango rolls in response to Director Krennic, who rolled the 2 guns, but is also rolling not much else in his other dice. And there's the 2 Disrupt, meaning that Paul is unable to spend any resources because he doesn't have any. My kind of scum triggers and nets Dan a resource because Paul lost a resource. So FN rolls in, so no more upgrades on him this round, so far anyway. Rolls the +2 on Hidden Blaster, which is pretty reliable, and it's showing 1 melee damage there. There is a reroll. They may have misinterpreted Quick Draw Holster there, but no big deal. And here's a Relentless Pursuit, which is a pretty genius move, moving damage from the already marked for death direct Krennic onto FN. So it's just a free 2 damage. So that was, really nice play. There's 5 damage going back into Jabba, so they're not going quietly into the night there. Jabba down to 2 health. FN still on 9, Jango is functional on 11 health. There's a focus, so Jango is showing 4 damage. And here Paul, I think, uses the Imperial Discipline ability to focus, to remove that die to focus another die to a ranged side or a resource side, and of course he's wanting to output damage. And Dan responds perfectly with the Electroshock to remove it. So no dice left on the field. The Death Trooper die at the bottom there isn't actually in the field this turn, and here comes the claim from Paul. So that will not only deny 2 resources to Dan, but it'll also net him a resource and get him the battlefield. It would also get the Death Trooper into the pool, but unfortunately Director Krennic is defeated. And here comes 4 more damage into FN. So FN is still on 5 health against 2 health Jabba and a full health Jango. So it's not looking great. FN has historically been very strong in the meta, but I think this is definitely an uphill battle. Here comes a hunting rifle for 1, which will trigger FN's ability, who will be able to roll it in and resolve it. Paul may have missed that. I don't think he's played FN much before, and so he rolls it in but does not resolve it. Here is an Ascension Gun from Dan. It's a pretty interesting upgrade, which is able to use the battlefield ability of the other battlefield that was brought to the game, but it's the same one as they have anyway. Paul opting for speed over resolving the resource and then re-rolling that hunting rifle back in. Rolls 2 single damage in addition to its resource. Jango responds with a focus on the Ascension Gun, a +1 resource, and a 1 melee. So pretty underwhelming side from Jango there, but the focus is pretty good. And now it's Dan's action. Jango's ability just incredibly strong, being able to action cheat his way in there. Jabba rolls 2 single resources. The Criminal Special, which isn't doing anything right now because Dan has completely out of resources. Rerolls Jango's +1 resource into the 1 melee, so is at least showing 2 damage that he can resolve in 1 action. And then he will fast hands a 1 resource, just getting a little bit of action efficiency in there with fast hand. Also another very powerful card in the Awakenings, or the early kind of meta of Star Wars Destiny. So here comes a superior position. Paul does retain control of the battlefield and is able to remove a die. He considers the Crime Lord, but then realizes that that's not really a threat right now, so we'll remove the 1 focus, which, that makes sense. It represents any other die side if Paul doesn't have any other removal. So here comes He Doesn't Like You in response. So removing the Crime Lord die, which doesn't do anything right now, to remove the 1 gun, which that holds up. Taking the resource. So there's been a fair amount of mitigation this round. Not much has been done, but there's still dice threatening on the board. And here we are, there's 2 more damage into FN. Jango just punching him in the head. And Paul has options. He can either resolve the 1 or re-roll it, trying to get to 2 maybe, or claim the battlefield and deny Dan value. And there is even more value now because of outmaneuver. So Paul, I think correctly, decides to claim the battlefield, preventing Dan from just ramping into 5 resources next turn, or 6, I suppose. So here we go. FN has 3 health left and was unable to do any damage last round, which is unfortunate. I also missed that Paul, I think, discarded a card to reroll last round, even though he had backup specialist, but it's easy to forget that that one exists. Here Paul plays Ground Battalion, I think mistakenly as an upgrade, but then it's quickly corrected, and so there's Ground Battalion itself as a support. Really nice 4-cost support that will always claim the battle. Sorry, not claim. Take control of the battlefield whenever it activates, which synergizes with Paul's game plan really nicely. Dan responds with a black market, which is functionally an economy/utility upgrade. Support. Grand Battalion rolls in, rolls the 1 shield, which is not really ideal. Jabba comes in, gets the Crime Lord, has no money, so it's not really a threat there. And Dan re-rolls Jabba's blank into a 1 focus. It's great to see the OG Jabba doing kind of what he does, because he has no damage sides, but he just ends up being a focus battery or just a source of disruption, which is really, really great on theme, to be honest. Paul ditches a card, again, not quite necessarily to re-roll into a 4 indirect for 1, which he will resolve. I noticed that Paul ditched a cannon fodder, which I'm not sure if he knows, but that card doesn't work in that deck because both of his characters are unique. But I'll mention that to him later. Here comes the black market, so just generating more resources. And FN will roll in for 4 damage across the board, which is a pretty solid roll, no need for quick draw holster there. Jango will roll in response and is showing lethal damage. There we are. And so Jango quick draws in and shoots FN down before he's able to resolve his damage. So really solid game there. We got to see Crime Lord in action, which is not something you can say every day. And really nice a really nice matchup actually, because both sides want to control the battlefield and both have affects the key half of it, so it becomes a really, really tight kind of fight for that. Thank you for watching, everyone, and see you next time.